The training hall of Fort Krillos buzzed with the low hum of charged plasma guns. Cadets from every corner of the galaxy scaled, furred, feathered, and armored stood in rigid formation. The air was thick with tension. Today was evaluation day, the day they would finally see the one species every instructor whispered about but few had ever seen in action. A human. Most of them expected a titan, a hulking war beast like the legends warned about, so when the human walked in, he was an anticlimax. He wore a simple training vest, hands casually tucked in his pockets, looking less like a legendary warrior and more like a bored tourist who'd taken a wrong turn. His name tag read, Staff Sergeant Mason Holt, Terran Defense Corps. Colonel Vraxer, the Academy's formidable head instructor, flicked his mandibles in clear annoyance. Human, he barked, his voice echoing through the hall, your gear has malfunctioned. The vest you were issued does not include the reinforced shield module. Mason just shrugged. Don't need it. A ripple of disbelief, then quiet snickering, spread through the recruits. One of them whispered, Terrans are so fragile. Is this some kind of joke? Vraxer grunted, his patience clearly wearing thin. Very well. Demonstration begins, on his command. For mech gunners towering automata designed for absolute precision in combat stepped forward. The cannons mounted on their arms powered up with the rising, ominous whine. Mason didn't flinch. He didn't raise a weapon. He didn't even shift his weight. Target acquired. The machines announced in chilling unison, fire. 18 plasma bolts erupted in a blinding flash, each one hot enough to melt steel. They slammed directly into the human's torso at point-blank range. The force should have vaporized him, except he didn't fall. He didn't even stumble. As the smoke cleared, Mason stood perfectly still, his arms hanging loosely at his sides. A few glowing sparks sizzled and died on his vest. His expression was one of mild, almost amused, curiosity. He let out a slow breath. If this is supposed to hurt, he said, casually brushing a smear of carbon from his chest, you guys might want to check your settings. I didn't come here for laser tag. The room froze. A cadet's weapon slipped from his grasp and clattered to the floor. Another whispered, his voice trembling, that should have incinerated him. Colonel Vraxer's chitinous crest twitched, a clear sign of shock. Human, what are you? Mason just rolled the stiffness out of his shoulders. Warmed up now. What's next? The hall erupted in a chorus of chittering, hissing, and frantic whispers. Dozens of species, all united by a sudden, creeping terror. The mech gunners recalibrated, their sensors whirring in confusion at the impossible readings. They tried again, this time aiming for the head. Mason sighed, a sound of pure boredom. Don't. The machines fired anyway. Two bolts of pure energy screamed toward his skull. He moved not with some impossible speed, not with some cosmic power. He just tilted his head. The bolts flew past him, scorching the wall behind with a loud hiss. He raised a single finger. That was a warning, he said softly, yet his voice carried to every corner of the silent hall. A cold dread ran down every cadet's spine. Instructor Talax, a Cyberavian with golden eyes, stepped forward, her metallic talons trembling on the floor. Sergeant Holt, she stammered, human durability parameters do not align with this demonstration. Our records indicate you are soft-tissued, oxygen-dependent, easily wounded. How are you still standing? Mason's smirk returned. Your records are outdated. He tapped his chest. Humans don't just survive hits, we adapt to them. But 18 plasma bolts, we call those minor inconveniences. Mason cut in. You should see what a Terran winner feels like. The cadets exchanged horrified glances. Colonel Vraxer had seen enough. A veteran of 9 galactic wars, Vraxer had never shown fear in his life. Until now. He descended from the podium. He opened a compartment on his gauntlet, revealing a needle-thin weapon crackling with violet energy, a face piercer, calibrated to bypass both armor and biological shielding. Human, Vraxer growled, his voice a low threat. If you are truly as resilient as you claim, prove it. This device can kill a war beast of my world instantly. Mason inspected it with only mild curiosity. Ni to, this is no to, Fraxer fired. The beam struck Mason in the ribs with a violent flash. Several cadets screamed. When the light faded, Mason looked down at the tiny, smoking scorch mark on his skin. He poked it once. How warm. Fraxer staggered backward. Impossible. That all you got? Mason asked. His tone wasn't arrogant. It was genuinely disappointed. Suddenly, the Academy's holo-screen flickered to life, automatically reacting to the spike in combat data anomalies. It projected Mason's vitals across the hall for everyone to see. Heart rate, resting, stress level, negligible, pain response, below measurable threshold, damage sustained, 0% biologically significant. A cadet fainted. The rest just stared at the human like he was a walking extinction event. Mason stretched casually. All right, since you've all seen what happens when you shoot at me, he cracked his knuckles once, and the sound echoed like thunder in the dead silent hall. Now let's see what happens when I shoot back. The entire training hall stood frozen as Mason Holt calmly stepped toward the firing range. Every footstep echoed like the countdown of an execution timer. The head of the Academy, Colonel Fraxer, croaked. Sergeant Holt, what are you intending to do? Mason just rolled his shoulders and tightened the training gloves around his palms. I'm here to show your cadets the difference, he said, his voice low and steadied, between warriors who shoot and warriors who hit. The Academy's advanced mech gunners reacted first. Their targeting systems locked onto him, and mechanical voices echoed in unison. Threat level, extreme, initiating suppression protocol. A storm of plasma fire erupted, dozens of superheated bolts screaming toward him, but Mason didn't even try to dodge. He walked straight through the fiery barrage as if it were nothing more than a hot summer rain. Plasma scorched the floor around him and detonated against the walls. But the shots that hit him directly barely made him flinch. One of the mech gunners stepped forward, raising its cannon for a full power, point-blank shot. Bad move. In the blink of an eye, Mason vanished. He didn't teleport or phase, he just moved so fast it was impossible to track. A sickening crunch of metal echoed through the hall as he reappeared behind the machine, his fist buried halfway through its armored chest. Sparks showered the floor. He whispered a single word, tag. The mech gunner collapsed into a heap of sparking wires. The recruits scrambled backward in a panic. A feathered alien squealed. He's not mortal. No mortal moves like that. Another clung to his instructor, yelling. They told us humans were durable. They didn't say they were monsters. Mason ignored them, studying the remaining mech gunners with a critical eye. I'm rating your bots 3 out of 10, he announced to the room. They shoot a lot, but they don't think. As if to prove his point, another machine aimed for a headshot. Mason casually snatched its arm mid-fire, twisted it with impossible strength, and redirected the plasma bolt straight into the third mech gunner. Both machines crashed to the ground in a smoldering wreck. Correction, Mason said calmly, 2 out of 10. The last mech, seemingly possessing a flicker of self-preservation, tried to flee. Mason raised an eyebrow. Oh, now you run? He casually flicked a discarded, still glowing plasma core from the floor. It sailed through the air and embedded itself in the fleeing mech's back. A massive explosion rocked the training hall. Mason dusted his hands off. 1 out of 10. And that's only because it tried to adapt. Colonel Fraxer stood trembling, his voice a strained whisper. Sergeant Holt, your species is supposed to be fragile. Mason gave him a sympathetic pat on the shoulder that nearly buckled the colonel's knees. See, that's your mistake. You think durability is just about biology. He tapped his own chest. This isn't armor, it's a high pain tolerance, pure stubbornness, and way too much caffeine. He then turned to the awestruck cadets in the Terran Defense Corps. We train to operate under conditions most species would consider impossible. Talax, a cyberavian instructor, raised a shaking wing, as such as surviving 18 direct plasma shots. Mason grinned. That's just a regular Tuesday. You really don't want to see what Wednesday looks like, He walked to the center of the hall. Now, does anyone know the real reason I am here? The room was dead silent. A hologram flickered to life above them, showing a massive battle simulation where hundreds of these same cadets were panicking, failing, and getting wiped out. This academy needed to understand something, Mason said, his voice ringing with authority. Your cadets aren't weak, they're just untested. You train them to shoot at targets. He gestured to the demolished mechs. But you don't train them to face an enemy that actually shoots back. The instructors exchanged stunned glances, the truth of his words hitting them hard. Mason knelt down, making eye contact with the young recruits. Listen up, kids. A warrior isn't made by armor, or weapons, or fancy upgrades. He tapped his forehead. It's made by what's in here. Then he tapped his chest. And in here, if you want to fight alongside humans one day, he continued, then you need to learn to think like us. Adapt. Push through the pain. Treat your fear like it's fuel for the fire, a young cadet whispered, his voice filled with a mix of fear and hope. Can we really learn to do that for the first time? Mason's expression softened into a warm, genuine smile. Every species can, you just haven't been shown how yet. Colonel Vraxer bowed his head in a gesture of profound respect. Sergeant Holt, today, you taught my academy a lesson it will never forget. Mason nodded and turned toward the exit. Good, then schedule me for next week. I'll teach the advanced course, Talax. The instructor gulped audibly. What's the advanced course called? Mason flashed one last grin over his shoulder. Surviving Thursday, and with that, he walked out, leaving behind for distraught mechs 70 traumatized but inspired cadets, and an entire academy ready to rewrite its training manuals forever. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. See you next time.